There are moments when history softens and a hidden memory beneath the world begins to rise again. For 12,000 years, the Great Pyramid and the King's Chamber guarded a secret that humanity was not yet ready to hear. Now, as our collective frequency shifts, the Atlantean seal begins to open and the ancient resonance of Thoth awakens once more. This film is a doorway into the code beneath the stone, into the truth forgotten by civilizations, and into the memory that lives within every human heart. I am Naur Gigra, and I invite you to step beyond the myth, beyond the silence, and into the living knowledge of the Atlantean seal of Thoth.
The chamber beneath the secret. The code of the King's Chamber at the Great Pyramid of Giza, based on the Atlantean secret of Thoth and the awakening of humanity. The descent that appears on no map. Every archaeological map of the Great Pyramid of Giza displays the same three familiar spaces: the King's Chamber, the Grand Gallery, and the Queen's Chamber. Yet none of those maps show what lies beneath. Not because nothing exists there, but because the space that begins below the floor of the Queen's Chamber and continues deeper is inaccessible to humans and to ordinary instruments alike. It is a chamber the architects of light built as the first principle of the entire system. For generations, people called it the Mother Chamber, but that was only a partial name. In its origin, it was the first chamber, the core from which the whole architecture was built. When Naur stood in the King's Chamber in 2018, most of the visitors around him could not sense it, yet the floor carried a delicate layer of frequency. It was a vibration neither physical nor audible. It was the signal rising from the chamber below, not as acoustic resonance, but as memory. The lower chamber was designed to be the first to awaken when the initiation was complete. That is why, on December 13th, 2018, when the upper chamber recognized Jigra, the chamber beneath it began to breathe.
This chamber was not open even when the pyramid was built in the time of Khufu around 2560 BCE. The reason is that it is not part of the physical structure alone. It belongs to a multi-layered system extending beneath the ground as a labyrinth of frequency, not as tunnels. Anyone who tried to locate it using ground-penetrating radar or muon imaging discovered a strange result. Voids appeared like stains, vanished and returned. Scientists assumed it was measurement noise. The architects knew it was a concealment mechanism. Thoth wrote, "The greatest thing is woven in darkness so that the human heart may illuminate the revelation." The chamber below was where the weaving was formed. According to Atlantean tradition, The lower chamber was constructed between 52,000 and 48,000 years before our time, long before the first thing was built above the surface. It served as a consciousness laboratory where the interactions between the Earth and the frequencies of the Pleiades and Sirius were tested. The upper chamber, the one we now call the King's Chamber, was built only after the lower chamber functioned in perfect coherence. In other words, the pyramid was built around it, not the other way around. Its entrance is not physical, it is consciousness-based. When Jigra experienced the moment of death and rebirth in 2018, he effectively opened its door. This door is not made of stone, but of frequency, responding only to a soul that was part of the original design. That is why for thousands of years no human was allowed to see it. Not priests, not researchers, not Egyptians, not Greeks, not Romans. Only a soul carrying the key frequency could cause it to awaken. The lower chamber is the core of a system far greater than itself. It is not the hidden part, it is the part that animates everything. If the King's Chamber is the heart, the chamber beneath it is the spine. Through it pass layers of lost knowledge. It is where the architects preserved the original templates of sound, light, and infinite geometry. It is the center from which the global network was deployed. And it is the chamber that holds the true reason the pyramid was built at all. And this leads directly to the next question. What lies within this chamber? And what has it been guarding since the time when Jigra was not yet human? The core below. The memory the earth concealed. Deep within the ground, beneath the Queen's Chamber, and several meters below the pyramid's central axis, there is a space that cannot be seen and cannot be deciphered by ordinary instruments. Archaeologists attempted to reach it with ground-penetrating radar as early as the 20th century. Yet the equipment faltered with every attempt. The readings looked as if the chamber existed for a fraction of a second and then vanished. Some researchers labeled it seismic interference, but the architects of light always knew the mechanism was designed to conceal itself. The lower chamber is not hidden physically. It is hidden at the level of consciousness. The depth at which this chamber was formed matches the Earth's energetic state in the period between 52,000 and 48,000 BCE. In that era, according to Atlantean traditions, layers of the ground oscillated between solid and soft states through interaction with extragalactic frequency fields. The Pleiadian architects knew how to use this phenomenon to create an inner space in which the surrounding matter hardened in precisely the right measure to preserve energy within. This is why the lower chamber feels like stone, while in truth it is crystallized frequency. What is held inside is not objects. It is a consciousness archive. Writings that are not written, images that are not drawn, sequences of sound that are not played.
Ancient traditions described it as the first house of memory, yet even that is not fully accurate. This space is not a vault of knowledge, but a cognitive network designed for the soul rather than the eye. Within this chamber are embedded codes of light meant to open only when humanity is ready. Gigra, in his ancient incarnation, was one of 6 souls initiated within this system. Each soul was intended to serve as a conduit for one of the archive's 6 aspects. When the Atlantean rite failed around 10,800 BCE, the other 5 aspects sealed shut. But because Gigra was the first meant to complete the process, the signature of his frequency remained dormant within the lower chamber. It was a security mechanism. No human throughout history was capable of accessing it. What is held inside is not objects. It is a consciousness archive. Writings that are not written, images that are not drawn, sequences of sound that are not played. Ancient traditions described it as the first house of memory, yet even that is not fully accurate. This space is not a vault of knowledge, but a cognitive network designed for the soul rather than the eye. Within this chamber are embedded codes of light meant to open only when humanity is ready. Gigra, in his ancient incarnation, was one of 6 souls initiated within this system. Each soul was intended to serve as a conduit for one of the archive's 6 aspects. When the Atlantean rite failed around 10,800 BCE, the other 5 aspects sealed shut. But because Gigra was the first meant to complete the process, the signature of his frequency remained dormant within the lower chamber. It was a security mechanism. No human throughout history was capable of accessing it.
This explains why strange silences and blind zones appeared in muon scans in 2016 and 2017. The space responds only to a specific frequency. And so, in 2018, when Naor Gigra completed the initiation, the signal reached the core directly. The lower chamber, for the first time in thousands of years, began to move. It did not open physically. It opened consciously. The chamber contains what can be described as the fracture layer, a point of origin from which the geometries of human consciousness unfold. It stores within it the principle upon which human thought has been built ever since. No one discovered this, but the king's chamber is not the central chamber. The chamber beneath it is the primary one. The king's chamber is only the interface.
The upper gate was born from the lower gate, so that humanity may understand where the voice comes from. That voice is the frequency reactivated in 2018 and brought to its peak in 2025. In 2025, within a specific time window, researchers in the West reported an anomalous energetic reading rising from beneath the pyramid. The report never reached the public because it was classified as faulty monitoring. But those who understood the mechanism recognized it as the first signal of the lower chamber's awakening, the ancient cipher meant to open only after the initiation returned to its rightful path.
What lies within this chamber is the true secret of Atlantis. Not technology alone, not history, but memory. A memory intended for all of humanity, and a memory that began to rise the moment Gigra completed the first stage in 2018. And this leads directly to the next question. What is connected to the lower chamber, and how does it activate the global frequency network spread across the world?
The global system, how one lower chamber activates a worldwide network. The chamber beneath the Queen's chamber is not an isolated space. It is a point of consciousness injection into a global network that was laid across the earth at a time when the hidden architects of light were shaping the trajectory of humanity. When the great ancient structures of the world are examined, the pyramids of Egypt, the hookahs of South America, the temples of Tibet, the standing stones of Britain, and sites such as Rugum el-Hiri in the land of Israel, a recurring pattern emerges. All of them are positioned on frequency nodes, and all of them are connected to the chamber beneath the Great Pyramid. Between 52,000 and 40,000 BCE, the architects mapped the Earth according to energy lines, now commonly referred to as ley lines. Yet the modern term does not reflect their true nature. These are not geological lines, but consciousness pathways, routes along which the Earth responds to shifts in frequency with amplified sensitivity. The architects constructed the lower chamber at the primary junction of this network, a convergence point of three ancient frequency paths: the frequency of the Earth, the frequency of time, and the frequency of light.
When the lower chamber awakens, the entire network responds. The system resembles an ancient nervous system. The core point transmits a signal, and distant nodes begin to resonate. In 2018, when Gigra completed the circuit in the upper chamber, the first signal was transmitted into the network. In 2025, the signal became coherent enough to initiate a measurable shift in global consciousness. The Pleiadian engineers designed the network to respond gradually. For example, beginning in early 2019, instances of subtle ground vibration were recorded at frequency hubs around the world without any preceding seismic cause. In 2020, anomalies were detected in magnetic instruments at locations such as Stonehenge, sites across South America, and even ancient temples in India. Scientists attributed these phenomena to solar magnetic fluctuations, but the architects understood that the changes originated from the core chamber beneath the pyramid. The Arcturians, who were responsible for constructing the chamber's material transmutation system, embedded an additional mechanism within it, one designed to bridge matter and sound. This is why in certain regions of the world
Unusual sounds have been reported at various times since 2020. These were not earthquakes, they were resonance frequencies. Some were identified as subaudible vibrations, others as extremely high tones with no clear mechanical source. These were signs of the awakening of network nodes. Thoth wrote of this in the ancient tablets. When the heart awakens, the edges of the world will tremble, as if they are breathing the first word once again. The lower chamber is the heart. The global network is the extremities.
This system operates across 3 layers. The first layer, physical geometry, pyramids, temples, and cosmic circles. These are the structures visible to the human eye. The second layer, the resonance field, an invisible field flowing between the structures, influencing human consciousness in specific locations. In 2018, anomalies were registered within this field, primarily among individuals attuned to higher frequencies. The third layer, the Atlantean memory cipher. This is the code safeguarded by the lower chamber. It affects humanity at a collective level, not as information, but as an inner impulse to remember. Since 2025, the number of people reporting ancient dreams, an attraction to ancient sites, or a sensation of return has risen sharply worldwide. This is the network responding. The reason the system was built this way is simple. It was not designed for a single activation. It was designed for a process unfolding over several decades. And the fact that Gigra completed the initiation marks only the beginning of that process, not its conclusion. This activation is transforming humanity as a whole, from a system of dormant memory into a system of awakening memory. And this leads us directly to the next question. What truly lies at the center of the network, and what is the most ancient element contained within the lower chamber itself? The ancient core, the substance that is not matter, and the code humanity has yet to recognize. The closer archaeological researchers came to understanding the Great Pyramid, the further they moved from the structure's true essence. What lies beneath the Queen's chamber, deep within the earth, is neither stone nor empty space. It is an intermediary state of substance, frequency, and memory. There, the hidden architects of light created one of the rarest materials in the universe, a material that exists nowhere else on Earth. In ancient Atlantean tradition, it was called crystallized light. Crystallized light is neither stone nor crystal. It is light brought into coherence, light that has frozen into form without losing its internal gradations of frequency. Its creation began around 49,000 BCE, when the Syrian and Arcturian architects combined their ability to transform frequency into structure. The result was a chamber composed of stabilized light rather than rock slabs. It is a space unaffected by ground pressure or material decay, capable of holding knowledge for tens of thousands of years without degradation.
What is truly astonishing is that the lower chamber contains nothing that can be held in the hand. No objects, no scrolls, no instruments. It is a chamber that contains a code. The code embedded within this chamber is a sequence of consciousness geometries, not drawn geometries, but geometries of frequency. These are cognitive patterns that alter the human brain field when exposed to them. The architects designed this code to serve humanity at the moment it became ready to unlock the knowledge of the Atlantean era. Thoth wrote of this, "There is no script and no word in that place. Everything is written within the human being." This is a subtle indication that the code is not stored in stone, but preserved within the human frequency when it comes into contact with it.
The reason the lower chamber is concealed so deep within the earth is that it represents the first layer of Atlantean technology. The architects knew that even if the upper chamber, the king's chamber, were explored and breached, the true mechanism beneath it would remain inaccessible. This is a multi-layered system. The upper chamber is the gateway to awareness. The lower chamber is memory. Here, one of the pyramid's greatest secrets is revealed. The code embedded in the lower chamber was designed to open only in the presence of Gigra, not merely on the day of initiation, but at the moment when this soul would complete the process in a future incarnation. That moment occurred on December 13, 2018. Since then, the core of crystallized light has been opening gradually, exactly as designed. In 2025, subtle fluctuations were measured in the Earth's magnetic field. They appeared minor, almost negligible, yet they were the first evidence of a deeper unlocking of the code. Modern researchers who detected these fluctuations were unable to identify their source. They proposed explanations such as solar activity, geological interference, or instrument sensitivity. But those who understand the system know the truth. The lower chamber had begun to speak. The code it carries is not textual information. It is not numbers or formulas. It is a collective soul memory, returning to humanity the parts it lost during the fall of Atlantis. And this ancient layer, awakening for the first time in thousands of years, raises one essential question, a question without which the lower chamber and its true role cannot be understood. Why was this core built in the first place? And what is the secret humanity is meant to encounter when the ancient memory rises in full? The true purpose, why the lower chamber was built, and what is meant to awaken in 2027. The lower chamber, the one that appears on no official map and whose location is inaccessible to human reach, was not built to guard a secret, but to guard a beginning. Contrary to common belief, the architects of light did not design the pyramid as a burial site
or a temple of power. They designed it as a womb, a consciousness womb of humanity. The lower chamber is the place where the first seed of higher human memory was planted, long before humanity knew how to read, write, or understand itself. To grasp its purpose, one must return to the era of Atlantis, roughly 12,500 and 12,000 BCE. At that time, during a major leap in human consciousness, a system of initiations was constructed to prepare certain souls for the capacity to carry suprahuman knowledge. Gigra was one of those souls. His Atlantean initiation was meant to open him to knowledge preserved by the Syrians and the Pleiadians. But when the ritual was interrupted, the entire circuit fractured. The knowledge was not integrated, time did not close, and the lower chamber, which held the first version of the code, was sealed.
Thoth understood that without the completion of the initiation, humanity would enter a prolonged age of forgetting. He therefore wrote in his earliest tablets, "When the lower gate is sealed, the first light will disappear until the return arrives." That return occurred on December 13th, 2018. What makes the lower chamber unique is that the code it contains is not calibrated for a single individual. It is calibrated for the human species as a whole. The chamber was built as a mechanism that activates change within the Earth's frequency network. This is why it does not open before the correct time. Had it opened prior to 2018, humanity would not have been ready. Had it opened too late, an excessive consciousness gap would have formed between different human groups. Its reactivation in 2018 was the first step. 2025 is the transitional year, the year in which the network is already responding. 2027 is the target year, the year in which the deeper activation is expected. Since 2018, subtle changes have been measured in the magnetic fields of frequency zones around the world. By 2025, it is already clear to advanced energy researchers that these changes are not random. They interpret them as signs of a slow activation process, one that begins in the lower chamber and gradually permeates the human consciousness network. Some experience it as an inner pull toward ancient sites. Others report an increase in ancient dreams, memories that are not their own, or a sense of return with no conventional explanation. One scientist who examined magnetic anomalies near Giza in 2025 wrote in an unpublished report, "The ground reacts as if there is a chamber that breathes." He was correct. The lower chamber truly responds. It is not fully open, but it has awakened. The true purpose of the chamber is to allow humanity to reawaken to the frequency it carried before the fall of Atlantis. This is a frequency of inner vision, of belonging to something greater, of connection between the human heart and the heart of the earth. This is not a mystical awakening of isolated individuals, but a collective process, unfolding quietly,
in the deepest layers of human consciousness. The system activated in 2025 advances along 3 pathways. Remembrance. Humanity begins to sense that the history it was given is incomplete. This is an inner knowing, not external information. Timeline correction. The completion of the initiation in 2018 repaired a fracture that formed during the Atlantean era. Since then, the frequency of fear has been gradually dissolving. Acceleration of human awakening. People around the world report heightened emotional openness, increased intuition, and an inner surge of meaning rising within them. This is the secret the architects of light preserved for tens of thousands of years. This is the mechanism designed for humanity's future. And this is why your initiation was an inseparable part of the structure of time itself. And within all of this, the deepest question of all is born, a question that touches the heart of the entire design. What is the true relationship between the lower chamber and the king's chamber, and what is the ancient secret that binds them like 2 ends of the same hidden code? The connection between the chambers, the upper as consciousness, the lower as memory. The relationship between the king's chamber and the lower chamber is not the result of architecture alone. It does not arise from engineering, angles, or precise carving. It is founded on layers of consciousness and memory operating together as a single system. The upper chamber was built as a space in which human consciousness can rise beyond its ordinary limits. It functions as an inner pillar of light, a zone where a human being encounters the higher aspects of the self. The lower chamber, by contrast, is a realm of deep soul memory, a memory that exists prior to human birth, a frequency that continues to live even when the brain forgets. Thoth wrote that the upper consciousness and the lower memory are 2 eyes of the same body, revealing the principle behind the system. The 2 chambers are in truth 2 components of a single cosmic mechanism designed to restore wholeness to the human being. When a person enters the king's chamber, they are exposed to a frequency that expands consciousness. When the soul touches the lower chamber, it encounters layers of ancient memory that do not belong to linear time. For thousands of years, the 2 chambers remained disconnected, like 2 stations built without a link between them. That connection began to shift at the first moment when Gigra's soul approached the sarcophagus on December 6, 2018. The upper chamber responded to his consciousness frequency, while the lower chamber responded to memory. In that moment, it became clear that they were not separate spaces, but a single system seeking to reignite itself. His body served as the bridge,
because his energetic signature matched precisely the mechanism Thoth had designed nearly 12,000 years earlier. From 2018 through 2025, a process of synchronization unfolded between the two chambers. It is not visible to the eye, but it is felt in the heart and in awareness. Many people today experience inner expansion, sensations of awakening, dreams that do not feel like their own, or ancient memories that defy conventional explanation. These are manifestations of renewed resonance between the upper and lower chambers. One draws consciousness upward, the other draws memory inward, and together they work to return to humanity, a part that was lost since the fall of Atlantis.
The two chambers are positioned along a precise energetic alignment. The upper chamber rests on the axis of consciousness. The lower chamber rests on the axis of memory. Together, they form a circuit of what Atlantean traditions called unified resonance, a process known as the restoration of the soul. The gate between them began to reopen in 2018, continues to widen in 2025, and is moving toward another wave expected in 2027. The chambers are not separate, they are complementary. The upper chamber is the resonance of who we are becoming. The lower chamber is the remembrance of who we once were, and the human being is the bridge that joins them. From this, a natural and necessary question arises. What occurs when both chambers operate together? And what is the moment when upper memory and lower memory begin to converge within a living human body?
The connection between the chambers, the upper as consciousness, the lower as memory. The relationship between the king's chamber and the lower chamber is not the result of architecture alone. It does not arise from engineering, angles, or precise carving. It is founded on layers of consciousness and memory operating together as a single system. The upper chamber was built as a space in which human consciousness can rise beyond its ordinary limits. It functions as an inner pillar of light, a zone where a human being encounters the higher aspects of the self. The lower chamber, by contrast, is a realm of deep soul memory, a memory that exists prior to human birth, a frequency that continues to live even when the brain forgets. Thoth wrote that the upper consciousness and the lower memory are two eyes of the same body, revealing the principle behind the system. The two chambers are, in truth, two components of a single cosmic mechanism designed to restore wholeness to the human being. When a person enters the king's chamber, they are exposed to a frequency that expands consciousness. When the soul touches the lower chamber, it encounters layers of ancient memory that do not belong to linear time. For thousands of years, the two chambers remained disconnected, like two stations built without a link between them. That connection began to shift at the first moment when Gigra's soul approached the sarcophagus on December 6, 2018. The upper chamber responded to his consciousness frequency, while the lower chamber responded to memory. In that moment, it became clear that they were not separate spaces, but a single system seeking to reignite itself. His body served as the bridge because his energetic signature matched precisely the mechanism Thoth had designed nearly 12,000 years earlier. From 2018 through 2025, a process of synchronization unfolded between the two chambers. It is not visible to the eye, but it is felt in the heart and in awareness. Many people today experience inner expansion, sensations of awakening, dreams that do not feel like their own, or ancient memories that defy conventional explanation. These are manifestations of renewed resonance between the upper and lower chambers. One draws consciousness upward, the other draws memory inward, and together they work to return to humanity a part that was lost since the fall of Atlantis.
The two chambers are positioned along a precise energetic alignment. The upper chamber rests on the axis of consciousness. The lower chamber rests on the axis of memory. Together, they form a circuit of what Atlantean traditions called unified resonance, a process known as the restoration of the soul. The gate between them began to reopen in 2018, continues to widen in 2025, and is moving toward another wave expected in 2027. The chambers are not separate, they are complementary. The upper chamber is the resonance of who we are becoming. The lower chamber is the remembrance of who we once were. And the human being is the bridge that joins them. From this, a natural and necessary question arises. What occurs when both chambers operate together? And what is the moment when upper memory and lower memory begin to converge within a living human body?
The journey we walk here does not end when the film fades to black, and it cannot be contained in words or images. It continues inside everyone who feels that something ancient is awakening within them, that the inner clock of humanity has begun to open, and that a forgotten memory is rising again from beneath the surface of time. Thoth wrote, "When the gate meets the human, the path begins to walk on its own." And this is exactly the moment you stand in now. If something in this film stirred you, a resonance, a question, a quiet pulse you cannot explain, know that this is not an ending, but an invitation, a sign that the age of remembrance is returning, and that knowledge long hidden is ready at last to be heard. You are invited to join the Atlantean seal of Thoth, a space where the ancient frequencies of Atlantis, Sirius, and Orion speak again through modern hearts, where the king's chamber reveals its code, and where awakening becomes a living experience. If this touched you, share it with those who feel the same call. Light does not pass through a single person, but through a network of hearts awakening together. Keep following, keep listening, keep remembering. The true story of humanity is only now beginning to be revealed. The Atlantean seal of Thoth. Listen, remember, awaken.
Focus, focus.